and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sparing the time to join us today. Hopefully, we're going to delve into some interesting subjects and cover quite a few of the questions that I'm sure is quite on the forefront of your mind regarding buying a property over in Spain. So I just wanted to remind you guys who we are, just in case you haven't heard of us or you're not too sure about what we cover and what services we offer. Ideal Homes, our head office is based over in Portugal in the Algarve. And we try and give you all the facilities under one roof regarding all the facilities regarding buying a property abroad. So that will be taxation advice, legal advice of all kinds, mortgage advice, currency exchange advice, and obviously finding the right property, the right location that suits you and your needs. So what we're going to discuss today is we're going to loosely sort of tie into the discussion of last week regarding the areas, where's good, where's not, and also what type of costs you can expect to pay for properties over here. Then we're going to sort of delve in a little bit deeper regarding the Golden Visa. For anybody who has heard of the Golden Visa, it's a fantastic project to encourage, obviously, investment into Spain and obviously the benefits and the rewards for you in that as well, and also taxation advice and all the facets of buying a property abroad. And there we'll go through sort of A to Z, exactly how it works in slightly more detail than last week. And then we'll have an open forum with a question and answer session at the end of the chat. For anybody who has a generalized question that we can maybe cover, if it's anything that's too in-depth or too personalized, what we would like to do is approach that question on a one-to-one basis over the telephone. So location-wise, a lot of people sort of are a little bit unsure as to what type of property to expect and where. What I will say is that as a general rule of thumb, the closer to the coast you will find yourself, the more likely you are to find apartments rather than townhouses or villas, because obviously the cost of land closer to the coast is going to be cheaper. So we do have clients from time to time that have maybe seen properties online and they're not sure of the location, and they are quite shocked as to the proximity to and from the beach. So bearing in mind that properties sort of more inland or properties which are maybe 15, 20-minute drive to the beach or to the coastline would generally be far cheaper or will be a lot bigger in size than properties closer to the coast. And that will generally be because of the cost of land. It's cheaper to build upwards than it is to build sideways. So what you can expect sort of closer to the coast, dependent on area, is properties 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, in and around, say, 120 plus €1,000. Now, that's not a rule of thumb because it very much depends on where you're buying. But again, if you're wanting something that's quite modern, maybe built in the last maybe 5 or 10 years, close to a local town, close to amenities, close to the airport, close to maybe local services like hospitals, pet shops, etc., then you're going to be looking at something in and around €120,000 upwards. Now, the general build style for properties older than that is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. And there, I mean, in areas like Torrevieja, for instance, you can get a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom as low as, say, €70,000, €80,000, sometimes even cheaper. But again, that would be down to your discretion in terms of the location, in terms of the size of the property, in terms of whether or not you can really sacrifice the fact that maybe you won't have a pool, or maybe the services you might be used to when you go for a property, maybe when you go on holiday or come over on holiday here. And if you could go slightly further back for a slightly bigger property, slightly more modern, that maybe it's just a little bit more of a longer drive to the coast. So what we will do in that respect is we will try and find out what your motivating factors are, because it very much depends on yourself as to how we can try and steer your search. If you're looking for a property which is for a rental income for the majority of the year, but maybe you want to have access to that property 2 to 4 weeks in that year, I think it would be far better to sort of maybe look slightly further away from the coast, but still having all the amenities in place. And obviously then your property price will come down, it will reduce, and you'll get, say, a little bit more bang for your buck, as the saying goes. So what we will do is find out exactly what your tick list is, what your checkbox is, and we will try and find a property and the location that suits. And that's when obviously the local knowledge comes into play and having the expertise in place to try and guide you through the jungle of properties that's available online. I'm sure you've seen the sheer number of properties that are on the online portals. So if anybody does want to discuss that with me throughout the chat, my contact email will flash up on screen. Feel free to contact me via email and I'll be more than happy to give you a call and have a brief discussion with you and then we can start the process, the search criteria, etc., rolling from there. So what I will do now is hand over to Imont. We have the legal service team that we would recommend if you do decide to go for a property here at our disposal today. So please feel free to pose any questions on our chat forum that we have, and we will be running a question and answer session at the end of the discussion. But I will hand it over to Imont, and they will discuss the golden visa, the buying process in quite concise details, and also any taxation when buying a property and also selling a property. So I hand it over to you. Oh, Anna, I think your microphone is, bear with us here.
Can you hear me now?
Fantastic.
Okay, so then good afternoon to everybody. Well, I'm Ana Maria, but I think that maybe the best is that Isabel introduce a little bit Imont in order that you know where we are, who we are, and then we can start maybe explain a little bit about the purchase of a property and the golden visa that will be, let's say, coming after buying a property in Spain, if that's okay for
Fantastic. You. Absolutely.
Good afternoon to everybody. I'm Isabel Montesinos. I'm a lawyer and I run a law office, a law firm in Murcia and also in Alicante and Madrid. And we've been on the business since 2004, helping international clients in the process of buying and selling their properties. We have also certified accountants, and here you are today, two members of my team and me to talk about the golden visa, the conveyancing, inheritance, and any other questions you may have about buying and selling a property in Spain. And if you need anything else, or if you want to talk in private and ask any question, we will give you in the chat the email address so you can contact us directly. Anna.
Okay, so I don't know if you prefer that we speak first about the golden visa or how to purchase or to deal with the purchase of the property, because I will be dealing with the golden visa matter, and my colleague Luis with the matter of cost involved with the purchase and taxes. So up to you which of the matters.
I think that Luis should start with the conveyancing process and all the costs of the purchase deeds and all the taxes to be paid at the time of buying a property in Spain, and then you talk about the golden visa.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Hi. Well, good afternoon. As Isabel said, my name's Louise. As you can probably tell, I'm British, but I have lived in Spain most of my life. So I have quite experienced knowledge in this kind of matters. With conveyancing, when you found that gorgeous property that Ben's going to find you, after that, well, we have to go through all the process of actually buying the property. Imont is here to make this a total stress-free experience. So what would happen would be is we would ask you to do power of attorney so that we could help you through the process to do everything. So depending on what the property you're going to actually buy, a new build or a resale property, there's going to be different taxes involved and different costs. But so for example, if you are buying in the Murcia region, there are one taxes, and if you're buying in the Comunidad Valenciana, which is like Alicante, Valencia, they are in a different tax regions. Now, for a new property, you have VAT, and on a resale property, you have transmission tax. Again, both in different regions are different prices. So it's going to be a bit depend on what you have, but they all range in between 8 and 10%, and that would be for, or if it's on a new build, you have your tax, which is a VAT. And you also have 1.5 or 2%, which is for your taxes. Okay. What I mentioned to you before was that you need the power of attorney so that we could be able to get your NIE number. Now, NIE number is you've probably heard before is like a national identification number, a little bit like your social security number, okay? This is something that is necessary so when you buy a property, but not just a property, but any large object. When you get that number, it is a lifetime number. It never runs out. So when you have it, that's it for life. It's an easy process for us to do. As we are a law firm, we have specific appointments and we can get them for you very quickly with this power of attorney. Again, on a resale property, you're looking at completion on normal circumstances. Between 6 to 8 weeks is around about the rough time that you can buy a resale property. On a new build, obviously it's going to depend on how far in advance that building is. I mean, if you're buying an off plan, it would just depend on the builder, and then, you know, you'd go through a contract. On the new builds, it's all the property price is into the contract, so yeah, you'd have like payment schedules. Now, I want already, or your solicitor that you choose, are going to check that contract for you, both new and resale. Make sure that it's completely legally binding and that you are safe and that everything is in process for you. And also, we're going to check that on a builder, for example, that the land belongs to them and that everything is completely legal, and then the resale the same, that the property belongs to that person that is being sold to you, and also that it is debt free, which is a big thing in Spain, because you've got to take into account that the debts stay on the property, not on the owner, like in the UK. So for example, in the UK, when you leave your property, you go, I'm leaving the house, no water, I've cut off my water and electricity, no problem, it goes with the other guy. In Spain, it stays on the property. That's something that I want to make sure that it's not, you don't have any problems with. We'll change everything over for you and make sure that when you move into that property, everything is completely legal. So the good thing about the power of attorney and having a legal thing is, for example, if you are in the situation that we all are in at the moment, we'd still be able to complete on your property for you. So that when you are able to travel, you can literally fly over into your new property and everything will be set up for you. So there's no need to delay the process for any reason. What the other thing is, obviously we'll be able to complete on the property for you if it is new on a resale. Again, I think I can see on the chat that they put all my contact details on there, so we'd go into more specifically. For example, if you saw a property, you could contact us and we'd say, look, I've seen this resale property in I don't know, for example, in the Murcia region. Can you give me any of the information? We'd let you know, and that would be no problem. Again, I mean, Ana Maria will explain to you all about golden visas, etc. And we also take into account that we do the NIEs are for non-residents. Now, it's just a number that you get, okay? This has nothing to do with residency or not residency. So when you buy a property, you would literally become a non-resident client. And if you wanted to come and move over to Spain, then you would just ask to be in for a residency.
Exactly.
I don't know if I've left anything out. I'm sure I have, because it's quite a long, complex, or not a complex thing, but obviously it is specific to each person and which property they decide they want to try. And that's a kind of like a very general outgo. But again, you've got the chat for any questions that you have. So
if I can just quickly interrupt, Louise, the sort of step process that we would tend to undertake is there would be a reservation fee.
Yes.
That would be paid, obviously. Now, is there anything that would happen once the reservation fee has been paid? Would you guys be doing anything at that point?
At that point, we will be checking the whole land registry. Now, we do a quick initial check, and then we do one that's a little bit more into depth. So when you do your reservation contract or your reservation payment, that takes the property off the market. So that means that the property is then yours. Now, deposits are normally non-refundable on most cases, okay? So, but you can have a little bit of negotiation maybe with somebody, but they're normally non-refundable. But we check then when the property is debt-free and that everything's okay for you to move forward, and then we would make sure that the contract was put into place. Now, one of the things is, I think people get, just because I know a lot of people are from the UK, is that when you say about contracts, exchanging contracts, it's not like in the UK, okay? Exchanging contracts is done right at the beginning, not at the end, like they do in the UK. In the UK, it's an exchange of contracts is normally right at the end, near enough on completion. The actual contract of a property is done right at the beginning.
Fantastic. And then obviously from that point onwards, moving forward, the deposit would then be put down on the property, and
Yes.
then you would do further due diligence into making sure that correct paperwork is in place, etc. And there's no debts in the property, like you discussed earlier. And then what happens towards the very, very end? Would the, as you said, you can sign over power of attorney. So the client doesn't need to be here to actually get the handing of the key process done.
No. In fact, we actually recommend that they're not. I know that sounds something a lot of people feel that they feel the necessity to be there on the completion day. It's not as glamorous as it looks and sounds, honestly. And the best idea for, especially for example, of a new build property, not all the water and electricity is normally not connected to the property until maybe sometimes 10 days later. So although you may have builder supply, etc., we recommend that you don't come over for completion, because your property is going to be checked to make sure that the house is okay for you. Most builders are happy to do snagging afterwards. Plus, again, we recommend it because that way you move into the house, you can see if there's anything that you don't like, that these, you need to use things to see if they actually work. And plus, it's going to be a lot more, you're going to feel a lot more happier to move straight into your property than actually, as I say, going, sitting in a notary's office, getting the key. But it's not, we don't, as I say, if you want to do it, you can, but we don't really recommend it, to tell you the truth, because it's nicer, I think, for you to come off the plane and move into that lovely house
straight away.
Yes.
And with regards to, obviously, maybe Spanish isn't a first or second or even a language spoken at all, person buys a property, they need to connect things like electric, etc. You know, your standard utilities. Who does that, and how does that work?
We set everything up on direct debits. Set everything up on direct debits for the simple reason of, again, it's not the same here. Obviously, being again in Spain, it's a different system. Easy for us because we've been doing it for years, but obviously for somebody that doesn't speak the language, sometimes can be a bit difficult. For water, electricity, for example, your council tax, etc., we all set it up onto you for direct debit. We also have a brilliant fiscal representation contract that, when for the years coming after that, we make sure that you stay on the good line, you know, because at the end of the day, it is a new system, it is a new things, and we make sure that you stay legal and always stay legal, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be, you know, caught out, and then that's when we get all the sad stories of people that have been caught out eventually.
Okay, fantastic. And is there a figure that someone could apply to a property? So they see something online and they just need a ballpark figure just to encapsulate all the services regarding closing down on the property. Is there a figure that someone can actually work towards that can kind of just give them a base idea so that they can do their sort of simple maths from home? Normally,
we've always said, I'd rather, a lot of people stick between 13 and 15, but I would always go for the 15% over, for the simple reason it's always nicer to get money back than have to then at the end of it feel that you need a little bit more. We always got, when Imont gives you figures, when we will give you a breakdown which we can give you right on when you actually decide on that property. We will give you a personalized breakdown for you. We're always going to give you a higher number that you're going to have money left over. We always find it's a lot, you know, better to always say a little bit higher than saying lower, and then at the end of the day having to say, oh, by the way, can you send me an extra 500 euros for something? I think it's a lot better when you say we send you back a transfer and go, here, you had 500 euros left over.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Louise, for shedding some light on that for us.
Thank you.
So can we now go over to speak about the Golden Visa and how that works? Is that all right?
Yeah, of course. Well, in let's say that in simple words, the Golden Visa is like a way to get the residency in Spain. What I mean with this, that here in Spain we have like two different point of views about the residency. One is to live in Spain. That means that you are not residing any other places, but you're living permanently here in Spain. And the other thing is to be fiscal resident here in Spain. That means that you're paying your taxes here in Spain. And why I'm saying this, because there are a lot of people living in Spain, but without paying the taxes here, or without paying the income tax to the Spanish tax authorities. And when you're trying, for example, to sell the property in the future, you will appear as non-resident here in Spain, even if you're living here for 10 years or 15 years. Why has happened this still now? Because there is no really a way to control or to check that when people are coming over, that they are registered correctly here in Spain and paying the taxes. Obviously, it doesn't mean that you not pay any taxes at all, because depending on if you're resident or not, you will pay another tax, okay? So coming back to the Golden Visa, that's a way to get the residency in a quicker way. And it's specifically for non-EU members, okay? So most of the clients that are applying for a Golden Visa are Chinese people, Russian people, but well, obviously it could be a possible option for UK clients after the Brexit. The way to get it, well, there's different requirements to apply for the Golden Visa, but I think here regarding the property, the most important one or the most famous one is that you need to buy a property or properties, because it's not only one, you could invest in more than one, that at least has a cost of €500,000. And it must be without a mortgage. So in theory, you can buy a property of €500,000 without a mortgage, or you can buy several properties, but the total amount of the investment in Spain must be at least this €500,000. If it's over this amount, it could be possible to apply for a mortgage or loan in Spain or out Spain. So it doesn't matter, but at least the 500,000 must be free of any kind of mortgages. And obviously, you need to fulfill some other requirements or to attach some other documentation to the applications form. Like as Luis mentioned, the NI number, because it's your identifications number here in Spain. So it doesn't matter if your passport runs out, the Spanish tax office will be able to identify you with this NI number. Clients need to bring as well the passport, the full passport, that means with all the pages of the passport. A health insurance in order to be sure that at least for the first year you are covered here in Spain with a private health insurance company. You need to have some funds in the Spanish bank account in order to be able to live in Spain. I think that one of the most questions we receive is how much money you need in order, let's say, to survive here in Spain. And the police stations has now mentioned that at least it must be around 2,000, 2,200 euros per month. Okay. And well, a photo, you need to have, of course, the purchase deeds of the property and a special criminal record certificate. That's more or less all the requirements in order to apply for the Golden Visa after buying the property, because you cannot start the application before you have purchased the property. So in summary, the first step is to get your NI number in order to be able to purchase a property. Then you will need to buy the property with the different costs associated that Luis mentioned, depending of the region where you're buying here in Spain. And afterwards, you will be able to apply for this specific or this special residency here in Spain.
So let's say, for instance, a client goes through the process, they buy a property, they contact you to start the process regarding the golden visa. Do they need to stay in Spain for any required length of time to actually acquire the visa?
No, it's not necessary. Well, I mean, as well as with the NI number, it's optional that the clients apply for the golden visa themselves, and they can go to the main offices in Madrid, for example, to make it on their own. But it can also make through a power of attorney or a specific authorization. So there is no need that the clients come over to Spain in order to apply for it. And there is no requirements for a minimum period that they need to stay in Spain, or at least that they need to live in Spain. Because this golden visa, one of the specific things that they have is that you're not obliged to live here. I mean, you can apply for your golden visa after purchasing the property, and then you have the facilities to travel around Europe without living here in Spain permanently, or without a minimum period of time.
Fantastic. And let's say, for instance, somebody decides to go through the process. How long should they give the process before they can expect maybe an answer, or even the golden visa physically, in their hands?
Usually less than a month. Why? Because specifically it says that the authorities has 20 days time in order to answer the request you make for the golden visa. And if they don't answer, it considered that they will accept it.
Wow.
Okay. So in less than a month, you should have at least an answer from the authorities, or if they doesn't answer, you can assume that they have approved it. So that's also one of the requirements, or one thing that makes the golden visa attractive for the people, because if you apply for the normal residency, without obviously putting so much money on the table, it could take months. Not because it's more difficult or whatever, but you need to go in person to the police office in order that they take your fingerprints. And to get an appointment, even if we have a law firm, we have specific or special appointment, it takes at least 3, 4, 5 weeks in order to be able to get the appointment at the police station.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you for answering that. So it's a very quick, quite a seamless process, and it doesn't seem like there's much really that the client would need to do. You guys can really do it all for them.
Yeah, I mean, what we usually make is to send them a list of the documentation that they will need to have ready in order to apply for it. And we can deal with everything without them coming over, and obviously without need to speak Spanish, without flying over with the family, because the golden visa will also cover family members if they wish. And obviously without them buying another property or wherever, it will be all in a pack as a family. So I think it's a really quick and also unstressful way to apply for the residency here in Spain.
Brilliant. I think you've really, really covered that very, very well, and you've answered hopefully most of the questions people have regarding the golden visa. And you're also contactable via email, and if there are any questions out there that maybe we haven't covered on this discussion, so that you can sort of take care of anybody that can really go through any sort of finer details on things. So let's say, for instance, sort of going over a few questions that I know sort of are recurring issues, things like inheritance tax. Can you give us some idea as to how that works? Sort of looking at maybe, let's say, Brits at the moment, and even, let's say, for inside and outside the European Union, is there a difference in terms of inheritance tax, capital gains tax, etc.? Can you shed some light on that for me?
Regarding the inheritance tax, it will depend as well as for the purchase cost. It will depend on where the property or the assets, the person that passed away, will be situated. That means that here in Spain, each autonomous region deals their own a little bit with the taxes. Roughly, what we can say is that the taxes could be between 15 or 20% on the total value of the assets here of Spain. But let us speak about Murcia, for example. We have here at the moment a very high reduction on taxes, and it's a 99%. So in theory, what you will pay on the inheritance tax will be a 1% on the total value of the assets. And in this total value of assets, we will include the property that you could have in Spain, the money in the bank account, and also any kind of vehicle that could be here in Spain. But a part of the 99% reduction, that it's like a general reduction, depending on if you are disposed, if you have children, or depending on the relationship that you have with the person that passed away, there could be another specific reduction. So as I cannot give you an exact amount, bear in mind that we have clients that maybe the total assets could be around 200,000 euros or so. The taxes that they are paying for the moment could be around 120, 150 euros, no more than this.
Wow, wow. And capital gains tax, how does that work? Can you explain what the percentages are there?
Well, I mean, the capital gain tax, it will also depend on, it would take it into account when you're selling a property, okay? That maybe Louise can explain a little bit also, because she deals with the taxes as well regarding the calculations in the break to the clients. And in the inheritance tax, regarding, there's not really a capital gains tax, but what you will pay as well is what we call the plusvalia, the local gain tax. Okay, so it's not really a gain, but it's a specific tax that you pay to the town hall for the years that you have been owner of a property. Okay, it's calculated on the cadastral value of the property, and it goes from the time that you purchase the property or you become owner of the property until you stop to be the owner of the property because of a sale, because of the inheritance, or wherever.
Perfect.
Yeah, as Anna Maria has explained with the capital gains, it also you have to take into account that you can get deductions as well, for as long as you keep all those invoices. That's why we have a lot of clients that have, we're very lucky, to tell you the truth, because we have a lot of clients that have bought with us and then eventually sell with us as well. So we have all the invoices, we have all the things for the clients. All those things are deductible. For example, your invoice when you bought the property for the deeds, etc. So all these things keep coming down, and we make sure that our clients pay as less property, taxes as possible. Normally it's on a 19%, but as I say, there's so many deductions that you can take down from there as well. Again, depending on the region, depending on the invoices that you have, for example, on commissions, etc. Everything is deductible. So we have a program that makes sure that everything is deductible for you. As Anna Maria explains, there is a plusvalia. Plusvalia is a tax that you pay to the town hall, and that is depends on the town hall. So that is calculated. The only difference on selling, for example, just a quick thing, because obviously most probably more interested in buying, is that depending if you're resident or non-resident, that does mean that you have a retention of 3%, or if you are resident, you don't have that retention. Okay. But again, if anybody has like a property or has anything that they're looking into selling, we can look into everybody personally, see what deductions there is for that property, for that area, for that town.
Fantastic. I mean, as you said quite rightly, I think most people here are sort of looking into buying a property rather than selling a property. But I think it's good information to have, just in case somebody has maybe a different motive for buying the property. Maybe it's investment driven. So at least you have a rough idea as to what the costs and the implications involved when it comes to selling a property as well. So just as a recap, it really just sounds like a client just needs to pick a property, pay the deposit, and get you guys to start doing the nitty gritty stuff. Is that right? Is that pretty much, is it as simple as that? Is it as easy as that?
It is as easy as that. It is easy as that. As you can see from the people, I mean, there is a lot of people behind Imont. I mean, you only have 3 of us here today, but there is a brilliant team behind us that everybody specializes in everything. So that we don't outsource any information. Everything is kept in Imont. Imont has been going for a long time, and we do have specializes in fiscal, specializes in tax, Anna Maria that specializes in inheritance, golden visas, etc. So we all have our shall we say good part to it that makes up this great team. So the idea is that you can all you need to do is choose your property, pay a deposit, and we will guide you through. And the next time that you come out to Spain will be just to move in and relax in your property.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, have I cut someone off there? Is someone just about to speak?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, so one of the questions that I have faced over recent weeks, obviously with the current crisis unraveling, is it safe to buy and is it easy to buy a property without actually having to travel to Spain? Is that something that can be done? Obviously from choosing the property and paying a deposit, absolutely, but from a legal standpoint.
Yes, I mean, for choosing the property and for actually doing that, yeah, they can do it from a distance, because we can offer a service that you can do your power of attorney in the UK, which can be sent over. We set up all that documentation for you. So yes, we could move forward. It is a possibility of choosing your property and then without coming to Spain, and actually the next time you come over to move into your property, it is a possibility.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. Thank you ever so much for answering all those questions and explaining in such detail exactly how the buying process works and also all the costs and everything involved. It's I'm sure it's going to be a great help to the viewers. And is there any questions, Tia? Is there any questions that have come up during the course of the discussion?
Hi Ben, yes, a few things have come up. I know some of them may have been answered, but I'll go through them again just to make sure they've been done. One in particular was, how are private drawdown pensions taxed?
Let me answer that question, but the answer is to say, please, for any fiscal issue, we recommend you to send us an email, because our accountant, that is great, will be able to answer and to personalize the answer of that question, knowing the situation and the kind of pension. So I recommend you to send an email to david@imonlegal.com. Okay, let me put it here if you want, the email address of our accountant, okay?
Brilliant. And then you can sort of go on a sort of one-to-one approach and sort of really give a slightly more tailored answer to the question.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is I believe this was covered, but I'll just double check. Is there a certain time frame that you must start the golden visa application after the property is purchased?
No, there is not really a time when you need to start it. I mean, to apply for the golden visa is completely optional. It's just in case that, or in another way, you can buy a property for 1 million euros and not apply for a golden visa. It's just the option that Spain gives you in this case to travel without the requirement of a visa through Europe, or to have the residency in Spain in a quicker way. But from the moment on that you sign the deeds, you can apply for the golden visa if you wish. Because even if one of the documentation that you need to attach to the form is the certificate from the land registry that will prove that you are the owner, a part of the deeds that you are registered here in Spain as owner of it, just with sending the deeds to the land registry, it will be enough to prove it. So if you want to have an exact date or time scale, it could be at least a month after completion, because by then the deeds will be at the land registry. So we will have all the documentation ready, a part of what the clients need to send over, but the documentation that we can present without stressing the client, like the deeds, the copy of the NI number, will be ready.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Anna Maria. Ben, I would say this is a question more for you. Is it better to buy in a gated community for safety, or does it not really matter?
I think it's really down to your peace of mind. Bearing in mind, if you do buy in a gated community, that you are usually going to have other facilities on site which could increase your maintenance charges on a quarterly or however it's set up on an annual basis. So it could be slightly more money in terms of the running cost of the property. I do know people that have bought on gated communities and people that have bought standalone properties just with use of the community pool, etc. And it really depends on you as a purchaser. Some people feel a little bit more comfortable buying on a gated community or a property that has 24-hour security, especially if they're going to be renting the property out for a lot of the time, or if, let's say, for instance, they're vulnerable or they feel just a bit more secure knowing that their property is going to be watched and looked after. So I wouldn't say there is necessarily a pro or a con. I would say it really does depend on you as a purchaser and what you think is beneficial for you. Great,
thank you very much. I'm not sure who this would relate to. Someone's asked, what about obtaining a mortgage? How early to do it and what level of finance is available? Again, I would imagine this would depend on independent circumstances, but what would you say to that?
Well, what I would say is usually you will go up to the amount of 60% of the property value being able to be mortgaged over here in Spain. There are some companies that advertise up to 70, but I would say 60 is where I would calculate my amounts. So 60% of the property, yes, you can get a mortgage over here. It is relatively easy to do. It's a very simplified process. And what I tend to do is refer clients to a broker. So what a broker will do is approach numerous banks on your behalf and try and obtain, using your details and circumstance, the best deal available and present that deal to you, and then leave you to obviously choose which one you think is the best deal for you. So you would go through that process, and I would say start doing that as soon as possible, because the quicker that you know exactly what your spending power is, the easier you'll be able to filter out the right property for you. There's no point looking at properties at 100,000 or 150,000 if you've only got access to 70,000 total. So yes, do it straight away. And at least if you can get an in-principle agreement, which basically means yes, providing that you can supply the correct paperwork to back up the declaration as to what you have said regarding your income and expenditure, you should be able to go for said amount. Then there is no reason why you couldn't do it as soon as possible.
Perfect, thank you. I've just put your email in the chat, so if anyone wants to contact you directly for more information on that, or even to see if they can be pre-approved, because I know sometimes the property you're looking at, you may not necessarily get approved for that amount. So sometimes it is worth looking at the amount you can get first. Moving on to a question for one of our legal representatives is, what are Spain's residency requirements without using the Golden Visa program?
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Ana Maria.
Thanks, Liz. Well, the requirements will depend on the situation of the client. There are some general requirements. That is, first of all, to have an NI number and a valid passport, and you need to be registered with the specific town hall where you're going to live. It could be your own property, or you can renting the property. Okay, so you need to present the purchase deeds or at least a rental contract, and then it will depend on the specific situation. If you are retired, if you're going to work here in Spain, if you're not going to work but maybe you're trying to find a work here, there are different requirements depending on the situation.
Perfect. So would you say overall it's pretty easy to do, no matter which way you go?
Yeah. There is not a long list of requirements, and as I said, at least you will need to have the NI number and a place to live. Okay, mm-hmm. Your own property or a rental agreement in order to be registered with the town hall. But after that, you can ask it at any moment to deal with the residency. But as well as I mentioned, is in order to get it, you will need to be here in Spain. We cannot deal with the residency through a power of attorney, because the, let's call it normal residency, needs the fingerprints at the police station. So at least the client needs to come over once in order to go with us to the police station, where we can act as translator, where we'll bring all the papers with them in order to to give them peace of mind that everything is going ahead correctly, but they need to come over at least for one time.
Perfect, thank you. If anyone has any more questions on that, please feel free to contact Anna Maria directly or pop them in the chat and we'll cover them here. Ben, back to you. I mean, this is pretty specific, so if you can try to answer, that would be great. If buying a property in mountainous regions, what is the cost for water and septic tank services if required?
Very specific question, and I would probably suggest answering that on a one-to-one, because obviously costs will vary dependent and which mountainous region are we referring to within what location. So if I can grab a note of the email address or the if they can pop that in the chat or send it over to us, I will come back to them and try and give them a bit more substantial answer.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll request that for you if we don't already have it in the system. The next one would be, what is the protocol for informing authorities if you want to start renting out your property at a later date, or for example, start a cycling tour business? Would anyone
it's a bit of a bit of a specific question, but here again, depending on the region, you need what they call a tourist license to rent out your property. Depending on regions, it's a little bit easier and other ones are a bit slower. Murcia region tends to be quite quick because they have a specific date that, again, like Anna Maria said, with inheritance, like the golden visa, it has to be answered by that date. If not, they consider it as approved. In the Alicante region, it goes a little bit more difficult, just because it takes a little bit longer, because the town halls get involved, and so they have to give you a specific certificate to be able to rent out those properties. So I suggest you can, as soon as you have the deeds of your property, I suggest that if you're going to rent out your property, if it is for investment, that you start getting your tourist license in order straight away, because ones will be quicker than others. I'm sure what everybody wants is to get that income starting to come in.
Of course. Thank you very much for answering that, Louise. So again, back onto the business. Is it easy to begin a business activity in one's personal home?
I will answer that one. Right now, it's as easy as contact your accountant and register yourself with the tax authorities and with the Social Security, and you can start your business immediately. After Brexit, we don't know how easy it's going to be, but right now it's really easy.
Perfect. Thank you, Isabel. Back to you, Ben. I know this one's been covered a couple of times, but if we can go over it again.
I'm losing you slightly.
Sorry? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me okay?
Hello? Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry, we were expecting bad weather over here, so I'm imagining that's got something to do with the connection. What's the expected impact on property prices in Spain regarding the COVID-19?
That's a very, very, very tricky and an ever-evolving question. When we think things are improving, there seems to be a slight curveball thrown in, which is slightly altering the perception sort of in its first outlook. So when this all first sort of came about, there was not really much change. We were told it's going to be 2 weeks, and then it got extended to 3 weeks. But even then, we just thought, okay, we'll just take an extended holiday, so to speak, and things will be back, up and running and back to normal within a month. Obviously, that hasn't happened, and what we're now facing is obviously a 14-day quarantine period. Obviously, starting from later on in this month, regarding in June, even for the whole of the summer holidays. We don't know exactly how long it's going to be extended for at this moment, and it's an ever-changing discussion. So visitors who are coming over are being asked to quarantine for 14 days, and before they can obviously go out in public. Now, this is obviously going to have a knock-on effect with regards to vendors. When we approached vendors initially, they were not wanting to drop any prices. They were not wanting to do anything out of the ordinary regarding funding of the property or things. What they were willing to do, however, was maybe throw in an air conditioning unit or offer a free swimming pool or something along those lines to kind of sweeten the deal. Whether or not recent news will change minds, I'm not sure, but I would say watch this space. If there is going to be any reductions in costs, we will put it on our website. You do have a section on our website which has the discounted properties on there, as obviously some countries are, and some developers in those countries are reducing costs. So I would say at this moment in time, you probably find that the reduction in costs will come from the private vendors who are in a particular circumstance where they need to sell their property quick. So if you are sort of looking on the private vendors list or the resales list, so to speak, definitely feel free to put offers in, because you never know. They're not going to advertise their property becoming cheaper, because then it will go in all the forums and then they'll have to officially reduce their cost. But there is no harm in trying. And that really goes the same, for the new build and for the vendors there as well. Because if you go to them and say, look, I'm in a position to buy, I've got the funds, I'm ready to go, but I want to go for said price, which is maybe, let's say, 5% cheaper, who knows, even 10% cheaper, they may consider it during, obviously they won't publicize that they're going to reduce their cost by 10%, because then it will go on all the forums. And if tomorrow things pick up, or, in a few weeks' time, they're stuck at that price, and they will have to then obviously move forward on that price and accept any offers on that price. So I think developers are trying to play their cards close to their chest, but there is no harm. If you find that the value could be negotiated, feel free to put an offer in.
Perfect, thank you. And another one would be, if you want to sell and you don't have an income, what is the process? And would that make any issues?
Sorry, I don't understand fully the question. If you want to sell and don't have an income.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that would be relevant. Yeah, unless they were supposed to write, if you want to buy and you don't have an income, what is the process? Here we go. They've just unmuted. If you could elaborate on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Irene. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Yes, very faint.
Ah, okay.
There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. The question is, I think one of the lawyers or one of the ladies said earlier on that if you're selling your property in Spain, you need to show some kind of income tax or something before you can sell. So I was just wondering, if you're a cash buyer, if you buy in Spain, just like for holiday let, not even holiday let, just for you and your family to stay there, when I want to sell again, what do I need? Anything to prove that, yeah, it's my property, and what do I need to do?
No, you don't need to prove anything for selling. If you've bought your property and want to sell the property, you don't need to prove any income or etc. You would just sell your property on,
Okay.
and you would pay. What we were talking about is the taxes that you need to pay on the selling the property.
Right.
But that would be depending on exactly where the property is, what town hall it is, but you'd have specific taxes to pay on it. If you are a non-resident, they will retain a 3% of the property price, which will then later, if you're up to date with your taxes, will be given back to you.
Okay, so what you say, if you're up to date with your taxes, what taxes are we talking about?
If you're non-resident, you should be paying a non-residence tax on a yearly basis. Is
that the property tax?
Pardon?
Is that the property tax?
It's called a non-residence tax. Now, this is a tax that everybody pays on their property if you are non-resident. So, if you that would just make sure that you are up to date with your taxes and your everything with the government while you sell the property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess, I mean, if anyone's got any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We have answered everything that's on there at the moment. So I wouldn't know if anyone would want to take this opportunity, if they'd like to unmute themselves and ask questions directly. Otherwise, we can do a follow-up and send a copy of the recording through to everyone. It's completely up to you.
There's the question, if you're non-resident, I live in England, and if I buy a property in Spain and I use it maybe once or twice a month with myself and my family, or even 3 times a month, do you get a resident permit with that without the golden visa? Or can you apply for a residency?
I mean, if you're just going to use the property for holiday reasons or just to fly over for a week or so, there is no need to apply for a residency permission, because you will not be considered as a resident here. What I mean is that you're not living permanently here. So you just can fly over whenever you wish, use the property without paying any tax regarding a residency, or without the need to make any kind of applications form to the Spanish authorities.
Okay, so how long can I use? Can I stay there for 3 months, for instance?
It's the 90. Yeah. There is a 90-day rule on the properties here in Spain for the UK at the moment. Again, until Brexit comes in, we won't know exactly, but at the moment there is a 90-day rule that any time over that, you should become resident.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Anna Maria, I just had a question pop up over here. Let's say somebody wants to buy a property, they're going to rent the property out, but in 5 or 10 years' time, they plan to actually retire here and live here full time. How easy is it then? And what's the process applying for residency?
The process is exactly the same as when you decide to become a bit. Because if you're buying...
We lost you there for a minute, Anna Maria.
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, okay. So the requirements are exactly the same if you're buying if you apply for the residency after buying a property, or 5 or 10 years later, with the actual regulation that we have. The difference is, or could be, the requirements or the extra requirements to send to the authorities. Because if you buying the property now, you're working in the UK, and in 10 years you are retired, maybe then you will need to get the P60, the pay slips, or pension certificate as extra documents. But there's no time limit to apply for the residency, or an age limit, or a difference if you bought the property 10 years ago or five months ago.
Fantastic. Brilliant, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions, Tia?
No, none's come through. So like I said, I'll repeat that if anyone would like to ask any direct questions, that would be now, really, if they'd like to unmute themselves, if there's anything in specific. Otherwise, I think we should be able to, hold on a moment. Gordon, let's have a look. You've asked, will you be looking at renting instead of buying? Can you elaborate on that a little bit if possible? If you'd like to unmute yourself, please feel free to do so.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, yeah, as opposed to sort of like jumping straight into buying a property, if you was to decide, you know, I mean, not having to live in Spain before, or, I mean, I've travelled to Spain, but there's a difference between living and travelling. As opposed to renting for 6 months to decide as to whether you do want to take up the opportunity to buy and stay and live into as a permanent residence in Spain. Is there any way you can help or advise on doing that?
Yeah, I'll answer that question for Gordon, if that's okay. I would say yes, you definitely can process, sort of take things in that course. What I would do is have a chat with us and we'll try and sort of gain as much from you as possible in terms of your likes and dislikes, what you expect property to give you, etc. And then we can try and give you suggestions on areas that we think you should start with. And then from there, we can try and organise for you to view properties with the view of renting. And then you can obviously rent. I would say keep your boat hold back in the UK until you have made a firm decision as to where you'd like to be. And then you could rent for obviously up to the set time of 90 days. And then after that period of time, you can then decide as to what you'd like to do from there. And I think if you were to, let's say, for instance, jot and dot around, it can be quite confusing. So what I would say is try and get a to and a from, and at least stick within that remit, because there are quite a few areas of Spain that can accommodate you, but each one is different in its characteristics. So, have a chat with us. Maybe we can again exchange details, and I can give you a bit more of a personalized answer and a tailored answer to that. And I'll be more than happy to do that and see where we go from there.
Okay, excellent. I'll send a full email over. It'll probably be best.
No problem at all.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So another question regarding the golden visa, but is there any requirement to hold the property for certain years after obtaining it, and can you later decide to sell and then rent in Spain?
There's not a certain time that you should have the property, but when you start the golden visa and you get it, it will be valid for 1 year. After this year, you should renew it. So obviously, if you sell the property during this time, it could be possible that the authorities will not renew it directly unless that you can prove that you're thinking to buy another property or that you maybe invest in Spain.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Ben, was you going to say something then?
It was just coming across quite slow, so I didn't know if that was the same for everyone else, but it seemed to be breaking up on my side, but maybe it was clear for everyone else.
Joys of the internet. So any other questions from anyone else at this time? Hang on, let's see. So the golden visa is only good for as long as you have 500,000. I'm assuming it'd be euros for Spain, not pounds or dollars. Yeah. So it'd be 500,000 euros would need to be tied into a property.
Yeah, I mean, there are other options to get the golden visa, like to invest, for example, in the public debt of the government, but then with a limit or with a minimum of 2 million euros. So I have just mentioned the one with the 500,000 because it's regarding properties in order to buy a property, but there are other ways to get the golden visa, but for a higher amount.
Perfect, thank you. I mean, what we can do if you, when we send the follow-up email with a copy of the recording, if you guys have any PDF documents or anything that we can attach to that to that for people regarding the requirements, how to obtain it, sort of that kind of thing, that would be great. But any other questions, or would anyone else like to add on to this? Okay, so someone's put they've got a European passport, but their wife has a British passport, a UK passport. Would this be okay? Would that have any relevance?
Is that the reference to the golden visa or the residency?
Oh, let's see. I mean, would you be interested in taking your microphone off, or would you prefer to stick to the chat? There we go. Thank you, Kevin.
So the question is, so I have a dual nationality, but should we choose to come, my wife doesn't at the moment. Now, Brexit obviously in mind here. In some countries, if you have a European passport, your spouse is allowed to stay with you under that and still get no restrictions. Is that the same there?
Ana Maria?
Wait, but what? Sorry, what did you mean with the restrictions? In order to stay in Spain before applying for the residency, or to apply
around Europe, or get the, or would it still have the restrictions in Europe if you were living there with a UK passport? If I have a European one and my wife doesn't, would she face restrictions still for traveling around Europe?
I mean, the restriction will depend on what happens after the Brexit. Obviously, if you have, for example, a German passport, for the moment you can travel around Europe without any kind of restrictions. Depending on what happens with the Brexit, it could be possible that a visa is necessary or not. And for Spain as well, I mean, it doesn't matter which nationality you have. If you're staying more than 90 days permanently here in Spain, you should apply for the residency, but there won't be any kind of other restriction for the moment.
Yeah, that's not really the question. So for example, you apply for residency, but that doesn't necessarily give you a golden visa to travel around the rest of Europe.
No.
So my question is, if one of you has the European passport but the other one doesn't, is the other one still restricted?
She's gonna be, I will answer that, she's gonna have the restrictions that belongs to her passport. It doesn't matter if she's married with you or not. If she doesn't have a European passport, she will have the same restrictions as the UK citizens.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, another one would be, you mentioned about the 1 year for the golden visa. Would it always be renewable on a 1 year term? Or
No,
does it change?
It changed a little bit. The first period will be for 1 year. After that, you can renew it for 2 years. And after being 5 years here in Spain, you can apply for the permanent residency. So the time scale will be 1 year, 2 years, 2 years. So in total, you will have 5. And from this moment on, you can apply for the permanent residency, and then there is no need to renew it each year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Nothing else coming through at the moment. I'm not sure if I can see someone typing or whether or not you would like to wrap that up here. Oh no, there it is. So as a an American passport holder, which EU countries would they not be able to visit without the golden visa? Anyone?
I'm not. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it will depend on the restrictions regarding if, obviously, if you have the golden visa, you can travel without a visum through the whole Europe without any restrictions. Without the golden visa, it will depend on each country.
Would you have something like that in documentation, or does that vary on the country of origin, like where they are based, what they're allowed to travel with that passport, essentially?
We don't have that on documentation as such, but we could get it for you and look into it for you, but it will vary on the country of origin.
Well, I asked the question, and I'm the U.S. citizen.
Yes.
So, and I've traveled all throughout Europe. I've never had a problem. I can't think of a time that I needed a visa. So I'm trying to understand why this would become a problem for me. I travel all through Europe with impunity. I go, you know, so why do I need this? I mean, I'm tying up a lot of cash in a piece of property to get something that I don't think I need. Help me understand that.
But you said that you are from the USA?
Yes.
And you travel without any kind of visa through all Europe, just with your passport? You don't have a tourist visa for 90 days?
Yeah. I mean, I've been, yeah, I can't think of a time when I needed a visa, and other than I went into Russia once, but they're not EU, right?
No, but if you enter in Spain as a tourist, you can only be here 90 days if you are from outside the European Union.
Right.
So if your plan is to stay just 90 days, you don't have any problem. The problem is when you want to stay longer. And that is what the golden visa is going to give you, the possibility to come here, to enroll your kids at the school and to live here.
Right. Okay. And on that point, if I applied for residency, then
but you
would I
cannot.
have to leave after 90 days anyway. If I came into the country on a tourist visa and or as a tourist and I was staying, but I said, okay, I want to live here, and 90 days comes, now it's the 91st day, but I've applied for residency, are they going to say, no, you got to go?
The golden visa gives you freedom to control the time. If you don't have, because if you are from USA, you cannot apply for other residencia. The same thing is going to happen with the British citizens after Brexit. So if you want to be in Spain or any other country as much time as you want, you need to apply for the golden visa, or you need to have something. Because if not, you will be a tourist that you can stay, you can buy a property, because in Spain, you can buy a property being from outside European Union. But you will be able to come here, visit for a maximum period of 90 days, and then leave the European Union. It's gonna be like that.
Even if I've applied for residency, I come in on day one, I apply for residency, and now I'm waiting, without the golden visa. I just applied for conventional residency, and that was a question I asked earlier. How would I get residency without the golden visa? And the answer was, well, it depends on the region and so forth.
No, but if you are from USA, if you are not European citizen, you cannot apply for residencia.
I see. Okay, that's the answer I think I needed to understand. All right, I cannot apply.
If you are not European, only Europeans can apply for residencia inside of one of the countries of the European Union.
Okay. All right,
this is why at the moment the people from the UK are trying to get all their documentation in for residency before the end of the year. That's why everything is being pushed forward as much as possible, because we don't know if there is an agreement. So UK citizens, because they are still in the EU as such, can apply to the end of the year, and then from there onwards we don't know what's going to happen.
Perfect. So I think that's a great note to end it on. I'll send a copy of the recording to everyone. If they've got any further questions, we can include the contact information of each of you individually. So if they have a specific subject or something they need to cover, they've got the right person. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope we answered all your questions. And enjoy the rest of your Wednesday afternoon.
Thank
you.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye.